Welcome to the CEO Insider Podcast, powered by YTexas. An additional form of delivery, too, as if you're watching on video, you're familiar with this look. Zoom conferencing is all the rage right now, and I am in our YTexas studios. Ed is in his home, and we have an exciting guest, someone that we're always look forward to talking to. Right, Ed?
Yes, Paula Gold-Williams, the CEO of CPS Energy. For those of you who are not in San Antonio, I'm excited for you to learn more about Paula and CPS Energy because they have a unique model. They are the electric and gas provider for the region, but they're also involved in the community in many, many different ways. And I know Paula and her team is leading the charge in San Antonio. And Paula, it's great to have you on. And how are things in general in San Antonio right now?
Hey, well, number one, Ed, thank you so much, and Sandy, for allowing me to be on the show with you today and to talk to your listeners. I'm privileged to do that. In answer to your questions, they are different. It's a big deal. We are in a stay home, work safe status across the community, which means most businesses have been closed. It's had a huge, unfortunate impact on the hospitality industries. Restaurants are finding a way forward with pickup, curbside service, but hotels here have been significantly affected. In general, just the pace of everything has slowed down. We, though, are considered essential service providers. We have to keep the power flowing. We generate power, transmit it, distribute it, and serve customers. So our employees are basically still doing their everyday activities. I will say the complexity of that is we are constantly in meetings thinking about how do we do things where almost half our workforce is working remote. More than half our workforce is in the field. They actually do the maintenance, repairs, the power plant operations, those things. But we have an inordinate amount of people that are working from home, something unprecedented. And we are using more digital solutions, more discussions, and we're having to redo our processes and redo backup processes because we don't know, just like everybody else, we don't know where and when this will ultimately end. And we've really got to think through all the ramifications of this, pandemic, global pandemic process. So it's odd because we approach work differently, but we are very focused on maintaining operations because there's never a time that we're not delivering power.
Yeah, and I have to give you credit. The communication that CPS has had with not only their customers, but Paula on social media with your Facebook Lives and your LinkedIn profile is very impactful, and I hope you're hearing that from your residents. But it really does, from somebody on the outside looking in. I do not live in San Antonio. I think it's remarkable. What I found interesting about your social distancing practices is, my understanding is you have about 3,100 employees, and about 1,200 of them are probably working from home. But you've broken them up into teams, different color coordinated teams.
Yep, very much so.
Explain that. It's interesting.
So our logos, we call it the sunburst. Our logo has an emblem, and the colors of it are blue, orange, and white. And so we broke the whole organization, every single employee, up into teams. Our blue team, they're our field employees, our skilled craft employees who have to be working on premise or somewhere throughout our organization. The blue team also includes all of the top senior leaders of the company. There are 9 of us, all of my typical chiefs, senior chiefs that relate to me. We are all basically front end workers, and we focus on our ability of our people in the field. What does work look like, and how do we need to protect them, keep them safe? So they're our blue team, and we are constantly thinking about those improvements. And just for clarity, for example, we are standing down. We're having what we call safety stand downs at every location. We have multiple industrial centers and actually retail centers across San Antonio. And the industrial ones are where we dispatch employees out for their daily work. So we have stood down, we're in the process of standing down each one on a day or two where they all go home, all the employees go home, and they sit and wait for a phone call from corporate office. We screen them by phone. We ask them everything from what are they doing, how are they feeling, to what's happening in their household, and is anybody not feeling well? Has anyone left the service territory for an emergency? I mean, we're asking them about their behaviors and their activities to make sure that they haven't done something or put themselves in like a big group and maybe potentially been exposed. From there, they have to check back in and get a physical thermometer check to be able to re-enter the workforce and then re-engage with the community and customers as they would, still using social distancing. We also have a white team. This team is a team that is core. They must come in pretty much every day or on a routine, maybe 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on. And what they're doing is we have a lot of secure measures, things behind firewalls and network activities or things that require more than one person to get them done. And so you're more efficient and effective to do it at work. And the first group is over, it's about 1,600 people, about 1,500 people. This group is around 200 to 300 people, the white group. And then the orange group is effectively about 1,200 people that we have sent home. And that we did that in waves about 2 weeks ago. We started working on that plan, but they're all working home. They all have devices. They're all using digital solutions for communications, high touch. So everybody is on the team. And even if you're on the orange team, the way they're positioned is orange is essential support personnel. And we basically consider all our employees essential, and everybody has to know their place, and they're all authorized to do whatever they need to do to service the customers and community. But it has given us more order, and it has let people still feel like they're team and connected. And that's kind of the big picture of what we've done to keep our operations moving while we've made these big transitions.
Paula,
nothing more essential than that. Sandy, we're hearing that this is great information for our listeners, because we're hearing this from a lot of different companies, but their approach is very well thought out.
Yeah, I was wondering, Paula, how much, everyone collaboration right now seems to be paramount, and San Antonio very much a hospitality town. Are you working with other businesses with ideas and solutions and sharing? If so, who are they, and who's helped you?
Well, it is, we typically say in San Antonio, there's only about 2 degrees of separation. So we're all very close. If we know somebody who knows somebody, it's really easy to get connected with someone. So basically, we are owned by the city of San Antonio, and we typically align to them as the city goes. We are making sure that we're powering everything that they do. We also have been designated, our field people are designated as first responders, so we're totally aligned to our police force and our fire department. And so for us, there's a deep connection. And so I'll talk to the city manager, for example. He and I talked on Sunday, or we'll talk at night. And so we're trying to make sure that we have those connections. I also have connections with our sister company, the head of the water company, Robert Fuente. And he and I, have the ability to have our team stay connected constantly on what we're trying to do. We are, in turn, we are part of, San Antonio sits in Bexar County, and so our judge, the Bexar County, is also connected with the city and us. And so it's a very fluid relationship just in terms of the municipal entities. I even talked to Jeff Arndt from the transportation, the bus company, today, and he and I kind of compared notes on how we're handling the different issues. So very, very unstructured in some ways and structured in others. Like we'll get a phone call if there's going to be a change in ordinance, and we get a heads up, and we get a chance to kind of prep for those things, but also very fluidly we're connected from that standpoint. I want to say, just relative to in general, Ed talked about this. We did a Facebook Live, but we have been over and over and over again promoting to our community and our customers, businesses, small business, medium, large, call us. We have suspended disconnects. We did that several weeks ago, suspended disconnects. And but at the same time, the system is set up to automatically start applying late fees. And so what we're doing is we're asking people to call us. Let us understand what your challenges are. Let's talk about a payment plan that is affordable while your money is either constricted or constrained in any way. And let's find a way to make sure that we can lift the late fees, which are a requirement in our tariff structure, so that you have some room, and trying to prevent you from having a big buildup of bills over time as you're trying to manage through this difficult period. So we actually encourage our customers to call us. We actually encourage our energy advisors to spend more time on the phone, not less. And we always have, but even more now. We want to help people. We want to be there for them. If they're going through it, we're going through it with it together. I have had, a president of a hotel call me and explain to me the challenges that he's having. It was a very thoughtful conversation. He brought us in. We had several members of our team listening, and we've been working on how can we be helpful. That is our goal. We want Texas, we want San Antonio, we want all the metropolitan cities and everyone across Texas to come out of this. And so we're trying our best to create an environment where people can transition and feel like they're in a partnership with us and not in some sterile, non-listening mode.
Yeah, these next few weeks are going to be tough, and I think the approach like that is very calming and very easing for people that are having to deal with this. And obviously, your customers are literally everybody that lives in the area. You mentioned a few of the organizations that you're working with, and of course, the supply chain, I think, is a big question that a lot of business owners have as it relates to not only their business, but the electric grid and gas prices. How are you working with some of the challenges with the supply chain as you're trying to meet the demands of all of the residents?
That's a wonderful question. In terms of power and energy, we're not seeing any supply issues, and I think that's because we control a lot of the natural gas reserves as a part of the shale gas play that is strong in Texas and overall is doing well. I am concerned about the oil and gas industry, though, because as we watch, the prices of the barrel of oil is declining, which is good for customers because they can get preferred pricing, but it's not very sustainable for that industry overall, and they're really being influenced by big developments across the globe between Russia and the Middle East. So we pay attention to all of that, but in terms of the pressures, in terms of the commodity of gas and the generation of power, we're feeling fairly strong. But on the back end, we have been informed of certain issues along the supply chain in terms of just general, the normal stuff everybody's having problems with: cleaning materials, wipes, hand sanitizer, all of those things that naturally have stops and starts. Our people sometimes have to wear, we wear a lot of protective work gloves, but the whole issue of plastic gloves and things like that are disposable. Masks in certain cases, we've experienced all of those supply chain issues. Certain pieces of equipment are getting constrained on a global basis. Lighting, we do a lot of LED lighting and things like that. And then even in services, where we've gotten a couple of force majeure letters from some consulting firms that can't get their resources back in the air. I mean, they might be out of San Antonio and coming into San Antonio to do services for us. And they're basically telling us that they can't actually give us those services. And some of them are technical and some of them are more office consulting. That said, what we've done is been patient. We're redistributing our work efforts and realigning, because the priority really is, trying to help everybody stay focused and operational and finding the way on the other side. So we're refocusing our efforts. And Ed, to your point, what we decided to do was part of what our Facebook Live event is one of our board members, Trustee Janie Gonzalez, is actually an entrepreneur. She's owned her own tech company for 25 years. homegrown in San Antonio from the south side. I'm from the east side of San Antonio. We talk about that a lot. We're both proud of our origins. But she and I were inspired to try to figure out how to get more local businesses where we can to potentially fill in some of the gaps. Now, we're a pretty specialized company. We can't buy, power generating equipment from just anybody on the street. It doesn't exist. But we're using more physical security. We're using more nurses. We're using certain additional IT resources and communication resources. And instead of pushing our outside vendors and being disappointed, we're looking at layering in local businesses as much as we can, which is a great opportunity. Restaurants, things like that. We have people who work in the field all night long, and we want deliveries made to them in the middle of the night so they can have a meal. I mean, we're re-looking at those gaps that are causing the supply chain. We're able to function currently, but we're really on top of it. We're tracking those issues, but we are seeing them. They just have to be mitigated every time you run into a new supply chain issue.
Yeah. San Antonio working together, Sandy.
San Antonio is a great town. It's a great city, and I feel like it's a tight knit city. Would you agree, Paula? You're a native.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, we are so fortunate. We have, our icons in our city. We've lost several of them over the last year or so. One of our board members, who was previous mayor, Lila Cockrell, we lost her last year. Tom Frost, one of the family founders and heads of Frost Bank in Texas. We lost him last year. But that said, we know their children. We know each other. We get in rooms far apart from each other now, or we have phone calls where we can pick up the phone and talk to folks. Every once in a while, I've been able to call Red McCombs. God bless him. His family lost his wife recently, but he is a huge icon again in San Antonio, in Texas, and he would take a phone call from me when he could without hesitation. And so people are just very interested in each other. They're very interested in getting to know you. I am from San Antonio. My dad was in the military, and we moved around for several years before he retired. And when I first came back to San Antonio, I thought people were nosy. And so I didn't like the fact that people asked you so many questions. But I was born here, and I figured it out. I needed to stop thinking like an East Coast person. I grew up, I spent some time on the East Coast. And in San Antonio, people ask you those questions because they genuinely want to know you. And ultimately, you're going to be able to call them and get some help if you need it, some advice, some counsel, a pathway, a connection. That is kind of who we are. And I typically say we are Puro San Antonio all the way.
Nice.
Well, I think there's a lot that the rest of the state can learn from San Antonio and how you're approaching things. And Paula, we appreciate your resolve and your leadership. And we're going to get through it.
Well, thank you. Look, I appreciate your listeners' interest in letting us talk. I would be available to you anytime. I believe that we should be helping business. What is good for business is good for jobs. Texas in itself is a wonderful state. I'm just looking forward to the time that we get through this. My board is led by John Steen, the mayor of San Antonio, Ron Nierenberg, Ed Kelly, Janie Gonzalez, and Dr. Willis Mackey. I've got only 5 board members helping me oversee we have over $11 billion in assets, but we understand again that it is important to support the economy and economic development of Texas. And so most of our power gets sold here, but about 20% of it gets sold to the state of Texas. So we care. We care what happens to Texas. We care what happens to San Antonio. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners today.
You bet, Paula. Thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it. Be safe, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. That is Paula Gold-Williams. And Ed, another good job from you. Thank you very much, man. You're getting better. I'm enjoying it. So make sure you check out YTexas.com. Check out the podcast, Facebook, everywhere that you want to know. We're keeping you updated on what's happening with with all different forms of business, everything from hospitals to real estate to power